Hey everyone, welcome back to another fascinating deep dive into the mysteries of the Bible. Today we're uncovering 7 hidden secrets in the Bible that may give us clues about the birth of Jesus. Was he really born on December 25th? Or does the Bible tell us a different story? Stick around to find out. Secret number 1, the shepherds in the field. Picture this with me for a moment. It's a quiet night in the countryside near Bethlehem. The stars are scattered across the sky like tiny diamonds, and a group of shepherds is gathered around a small fire, keeping warm as they watch over their flocks. The sheep are scattered across the open fields, peacefully grazing or resting in the cool night air. Now here's something to think about. Luke 2:8 tells us about these shepherds. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Sounds idyllic, right? But there's a detail here that might tell us something important. You see, in ancient Israel, shepherds didn't usually stay out in the fields all year long. In the colder months, around late November through early March, it would get too chilly and rainy for both the shepherds and their sheep to be out in the open like this. Instead, they would bring the flocks into protective shelters to keep them safe and warm during the winter. So the fact that these shepherds were out in the fields when the angel appeared to them suggests something interesting. It was probably a warmer time of year, maybe spring or early fall, when the weather was just right for outdoor grazing. Now here's another beautiful thought. Spring is also lambing season. That's the time when ewes give birth to their lambs, and the fields are filled with the sounds of new life. Isn't it amazing to think about the symbolism here? Jesus, the Lamb of God, born during a season when shepherds were watching over lambs being born. It's like God was weaving a deeper story into the details of that night. So when we think about these shepherds in the fields, it's not just a random part of the story. It's a clue, hidden in plain sight, hinting that Jesus might not have been born in the cold of winter, but in a season full of life, warmth, and renewal. What do you think? Could this small detail in Luke's Gospel be pointing us to the real timing of Jesus' birth? Let me know in the comments below. Secret number 2, the census timing. All right, let's set the scene. Luke 2:1-3 tells us about a decree from Caesar Augustus that required everyone in the Roman Empire to travel to their ancestral towns for a census. This is the very reason Joseph and Mary had to make the long journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem, even though Mary was very close to giving birth. Now, here's the interesting part. A census like this wasn't just about counting people. It was primarily for taxation purposes, and the Roman authorities wanted to make sure they didn't miss anyone. But when you think about it, December doesn't seem like the most practical time for this kind of event. The weather in Judea during December can be cold, rainy, and uncomfortable. Imagine trying to travel long distances with your family, on foot or by donkey, in those conditions. Roads could turn muddy, rivers might swell, and the cold would make the journey even harder. That's why historians and Bible scholars suggest that censuses were more likely to be held in milder weather spring or fall, when travel was easier and the agricultural season didn't demand everyone's attention at home. After all, a census required massive participation, so it made sense to schedule it when the largest number of people could actually comply. And let's not forget, Bethlehem was crowded when Mary and Joseph arrived, so crowded that there was no room for them in the inn. Luke 2:7. This also hints that the timing of the census coincided with a season when large numbers of people could travel safely. So what does this tell us? The timing of the census gives us another clue that Jesus' birth probably didn't happen in the middle of winter. Instead, it might have been during a more convenient season for travel, like spring or early fall, when families like Mary and Joseph could make the long trek to their ancestral homes. It's just another example of how the details in the Bible, when we really think about them, can reveal so much more than what's on the surface. What do you think? Does this make sense to you? Let me know your thoughts below. Secret number 3. Clues from the course of Aija. All right, here's where things get really interesting. Did you know the Bible gives us a timeline that might help pinpoint the time of Jesus' birth? It's hidden in the story of Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. In Luke 1:5, we're told that Zechariah was a priest from the division of Aija. While he was serving in the temple, the angel Gabriel appeared to him, announcing that his wife Elizabeth would conceive a son, John the Baptist. Now this detail might seem small, but it's actually a huge clue. Here's why. In ancient Israel, the priests were divided into 24 divisions, and each division served in the temple for 1 week, twice a year. The division of Abijah, specifically, was the 8th group, and their service weeks were set according to the Jewish calendar. Using historical records, scholars estimate that Zechariah's service in the temple would have taken place around late May or early June. Shortly after his time in the temple, Elizabeth became pregnant. If we fast forward 6 months from Elizabeth's pregnancy, that's when Mary conceives Jesus. This is confirmed in Luke 1:26-36, where the angel Gabriel tells Mary that Elizabeth is already 6 months along. So if Elizabeth conceived in June, that would place Mary's conception in December. Add 9 months to that, and you get a possible birth date for Jesus in late September or early October. This timing aligns beautifully with the idea that Jesus might have been born during the fall. It even overlaps with the Feast of Tabernacles, which we'll talk about next. Some believe this feast's theme of God dwelling with his people, John 1:14, could symbolically point to the timing of Jesus' birth. Isn't that incredible? By looking at the timing of Zechariah's service and following the timeline of Elizabeth and Mary's pregnancies, we get a strong case for Jesus being born in the fall, not winter. It's another example of how the Bible's details, even ones that seem small, fit together to tell a bigger story. What do you think? Could this timeline be the key to unlocking the mystery of Jesus' birth date? Let me know in the comments below. Secret number 4. The Feast of Tabernacles. Now this one is fascinating, and it's all about timing and symbolism. Have you heard of the Feast of Tabernacles? It's one of the major Jewish festivals, and it has some powerful connections to the birth of Jesus. The Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot, usually happens in late September or early October. During this time, Jewish families would build temporary shelters, called sukkahs, and live in them for 7 days to remember how God provided for Israel in the wilderness after the Exodus. It's a joyous celebration of God's provision and presence among his people. Here's the incredible part. John 1:14 says, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us." The word dwelling here is actually the Greek word skenu, which means to tabernacle or to pitch a tent. Some scholars believe this could hint that Jesus was born during the Feast of Tabernacles, when people were literally dwelling in temporary shelters, celebrating God's presence among them. What's even more amazing is how this timing ties into the themes of the feast. Tabernacles is all about God coming to dwell with his people, and Jesus' birth is the ultimate fulfillment of that. Emmanuel, God with us, literally came to live among us, just like the people celebrated during Sukkot. Another clue comes from the timeline we talked about earlier with the priestly course of Aija. If Jesus was born in late September or early October, it would align perfectly with the Feast of Tabernacles. And think about this. Tabernacles is also called the season of our joy, which makes it the perfect backdrop for the birth of the Messiah. Could God have chosen this joyous festival to welcome his Son into the world? It's a beautiful possibility. So what do you think? Could Jesus' birth have been during the Feast of Tabernacles, a time when God's presence and provision were being celebrated? It's an amazing connection that makes the story of his birth even more meaningful. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about this idea. Secret number 5. Prophecies from the Old Testament. Alright, here's a secret hidden in plain sight. The Old Testament is full of prophecies that point to Jesus' birth. But did you know some of them might also give us clues about when it happened? Let's dig into 2 key prophecies that could shed some light. First, we have Micah 5:2, which says, "But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times." This prophecy is well known for predicting that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. But what's even more intriguing is how other prophecies add layers to this timing. Let's jump to Isaiah 9:6, which says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." The title Prince of Peace is significant. In Jewish tradition, peace shalom was often tied to harvest times, like spring and fall, when the land's bounty was celebrated and people enjoyed the blessings of God's provision. These were seasons of rest, joy, and thanksgiving, fitting for the birth of the one who would bring ultimate peace to the world. There's also an interesting connection to the biblical festivals, especially the Feast of Tabernacles, which we just talked about. The language of Isaiah's prophecy aligns with the themes of joy, peace, and God's dwelling with his people. Could this mean Jesus was born during a harvest festival, a time of peace and celebration? And here's something else to think about. Numbers 24:17 says, "A star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel." Many scholars believe this prophecy not only points to the Messiah, but also ties directly to the Star of Bethlehem, a literal sign in the heavens marking his birth. So what do we take from this? These Old Testament prophecies are like puzzle pieces, fitting together to give us a fuller picture of the timing and significance of Jesus' birth. While they don't give an exact date, they point us to seasons of peace, joy, and fulfillment, times when the arrival of the Messiah would make the most sense. What do you think? Could these ancient prophecies be pointing us to something deeper about Jesus' birthday? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. Secret number 6. December 25th and the winter solstice. All right, let's talk about the date most of us know. December 25th. For centuries, Christians around the world have celebrated this date as the birth of Jesus. But here's the thing, it's unlikely that Jesus was actually born on this day. So where did December 25th come from? Let's go back to ancient Rome. This date coincides with the Roman festival of Saturnalia, a celebration honoring the god Saturn. It was a time of feasting, gift-giving, and merriment, held around the winter solstice, the shortest day and longest night of the year. The solstice marked a turning point. After the longest night, the days would start to get longer again. Many ancient cultures saw this as a symbol of light triumphing over darkness. For early Christians, this symbolism aligned perfectly with the birth of Jesus, the light of the world. By choosing December 25th to celebrate his birth, the early church may have been making a powerful statement. Jesus is the true light that overcomes the darkness, not just in nature, but in our lives. But here's the twist. While December 25th is symbolic, it likely wasn't the actual date of Jesus' birth. As we've seen from the shepherds, the census, and the timeline of Zechariah, Jesus was probably born in a warmer season, like spring or fall. Now don't get me wrong, there's something beautiful about celebrating Jesus' birth in the middle of winter. It reminds us that his coming brings light and hope even in the darkest times. But understanding the history of this date helps us appreciate how early Christians connected their traditions to the deeper truths of the gospel. So what do you think? Does knowing the history of December 25th change how you view Christmas? For me, it's a reminder that Jesus' birth is worth celebrating every day, no matter the date. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what this means to you. Wow, wasn't that an incredible journey? The Bible is full of hidden treasures and clues that help us piece together the greatest story ever told. Whether Jesus was born in spring, fall, or a different season entirely, one thing remains true. His birth changed the world forever. The exact date may not matter as much as what his birth represents: God stepping into our world, bringing hope, light, and salvation to all of us. That's what we celebrate, no matter the time of year. If you enjoyed exploring these 6 hidden secrets with me, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dives into the Bible and its amazing truths. And hey, let me know in the comments, which of these secrets surprised you the most? Or do you have your own theories about Jesus' birthday? Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, stay blessed, and remember, God's truth is always worth digging into. Until next time, and I'll see you in the next video.